This or that, sewing edition. Let's play. Hey Stitchers, it's your girl Kris. Welcome if you're new, or welcome back to the channel if you are an OG. Let me just take a minute to say thank you guys so much for clicking on this video. Thank you guys so much for coming back video after video, week after week, and engaging with your girl. It really does fill my heart with joy knowing that so many of you out there in the sewing world are interested in what your girl has to say. When I started this YouTube channel, I don't really know what my expectations were. I just knew I wanted to try something new and I wanted to share the little bit of sewing knowledge that I had with the world. And I am just ecstatic that so many of you have decided to join my sewing family and have given me so much support over the last 12 plus months. So for today's video, your girl is going to be playing this or that sewing edition. Hey boos, so this is Editing Kris, and I just wanted to stop by to wish you guys a very happy Friday. I know you have not seen any videos from me this week, but your girl is out of office. I am tired. Now, since it's Friday, I may as well let you know that today's feature Friday pattern for Love Notions is Love Notions Rhapsody. And of course, your girl has made the Rhapsody. I'll put it in right here so you can see what it looks like on the body. It is a dress and blouse pattern. It is designed for woven fabrics. It is size inclusive, as Love Notions patterns always are, ranging from an extra small up to a 5XL, and it boasts 9 different sleeve options. Like, what else do you guys need? That means this pattern is perfect no matter what season you are in. And so I'm going to encourage you guys to pick it up today. And of course, if you use my code, which has been updated to Unsewcial, I'll pop it here on the screen, the same as my channel name, the same as my Instagram name. If you guys have been around, you are very familiar with it, but you can use my code and you will save yourself some coin. Now, there is a full review of the Love Notions Rhapsody right here on the channel. I'll see if I can still find the thumbnail and I'll drop it in right here for ease of reference. Now that you guys have all the tea, let's get into today's video. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first this or that has to do with cutting tools. Are you team scissors or shears, or are you team rotary cutter? Now, when it comes to my cutting tools, I think my preference has changed over time. Initially, I was team shears. I loved having a good pair of shears, and I much preferred using my shears to cut out my projects. I had tried using a rotary cutter once or twice, and I hated it, you guys. I then decided to give the LDH rotary cutter a try. And I swear, that one has changed my life. Now, in terms of my shears, I have used Gingers. Gingers? Is it Gingers? I think it's Gingers. I've also used Fiskars. And then I bought a pair of LDH Midnight Edition shears. And I really do like those. But as I said, I decided to give their rotary cutter a try, and that one has changed my life. It is so sharp, and it just makes cutting much easier. I think looking back, perhaps it was the type of rotary cutter that I had been using. First, I was using this no brand rotary cutter. I can't even remember where it was from. And it wasn't very sharp, and I didn't find that it was cutting through my fabrics nicely. Then I tried out the Alpha rotary cutter. That one was a little bit better, but still I found I had to be pressing down really hard to get my pieces cut out. It might be that I was using sharp blades because I bought my blades, but then I did have them exposed to the elements, and I found that the blades were rusting quite quickly and easily. So I don't know if that had something to do with how it was cut. As a matter of fact, it probably did have something to do with how those were cutting out. But as I said, I then switched to LDH and bought their rotary cutter, and their rotary cutter comes in this nice little pouch, and I make sure to put my rotary cutter back in that pouch every time I use it, and that one has been a life changer for me. Obviously, if you're using a rotary cutter, then you need a mat, and I have I think it is 20 by 60 inch mat, And my brother actually bought that one for me. Before that, I had a tiny little mat, well, tiny comparatively speaking. And obviously, if you're cutting out using a rotary cutter, you want to have the biggest mat possible so you don't have to be trying to shift the mat onto your piece in order to use the rotary cutter. You can't use your rotary cutter on tile, and I don't think you can use it on wood either. You really do need to have a cutting mat. Now, Carmen from the Black Sewing Network constantly talks about big mat, and I have gone looking into getting a big mat, but they are a little bit pricey. So I am saving up towards getting a big mat, and I'm really, really excited. I could get a smaller version of the big mat, but I don't want that. I want a big mat that is bigger than my current mat, because even though my mat size was to me quite big, I still find when I'm cutting out certain pieces, it does get a little bit tricky, because then I either have to piece my mats together because my mat is not big enough, or I have to try and shift my mat onto the pieces. And I really, really do not recommend shifting your mat midway through cutting out your pieces. That leads to distortion really, really quick. Now, in terms of using my scissors and shears, I do use them sometimes, particularly when I'm cutting thicker pieces. So when I'm using fabrics such as denim or twill, I will quicker draw for my shears than my rotary cutter. But if your girl is working with anything that is shifty or slippery, like rayons, which I really like working with, and more recently swimsuiting fabric, then I definitely want to be using my rotary cutter, my cutting mats, and my weights. It just prevents your pieces from shifting. You know, when you're cutting with scissors and you're using your scissors and you're moving it along your piece, it does have a tendency to sort of shift your fabric if you're not really, really careful, or if you don't use lots and lots of pins. And using a rotary cutter and cutting mat just reduces that vastly. So when it comes to scissors or shears versus the rotary cutter, your girl thinks that the rotary cutter is edging out, and so I am going to choose my rotary cutter. What about you guys? Do you prefer to use scissors, or are you team rotary cutter? Drop me a comment down below and let me know, when it comes to this or that option one, which team are you on? Now, the next this or that has to do with securing our patterns to our fabrics. Are you team pins, or are you team clips? Now, so far as I am concerned, I think I am team pins. I do have some wonder clips that I had bought, I think it was from Wawak a long time ago, and I do use them sometimes, more usually when I'm making bag patterns, or if I happen to be using a fabric that doesn't take pinning very well. So think things like faux leather and vinyl and cork. Again, these are materials that I have used in my bag making, limited though it may be, but when it comes to sewing up garments, I am definitely team pins. You may have watched my video 5 toxic traits. If you have not, I'll link it here. That one was pretty funny in my opinion. You probably should go ahead and check it out. And you would have seen me in that video talking about how I can't stop putting pins in my mouth. So I'm pinning a pattern piece and I need to shift it around just a little bit. I pull the pin out, it goes in my mouth. Is it that I don't have a magnetic pin holder? I absolutely do. And it is usually pretty near to where I'm working. But for some reason, I keep pulling my pins and sticking them in my mouth. So again, when I'm constructing my garments, I'm probably 90% more likely to use pins than I do wonder clips. And so when it comes to this or that, question number 2, I'm definitely team pins. But what about you guys? Do you prefer using pins, or do you prefer using wonder clips? And as a segue, if you do use pins, do you have a preference for the type of pin that you use? I like to use the pearlized pins. I find them to be really sharp, and I like the different colors for the pin tops. I know it doesn't really make much of a difference, but I do find it aesthetically pleasing. And for those part of the sewing journey that are not as exciting as actually sitting at the machine and sewing, it is the little things that make huge differences. So let me know down below in the comment section. Now, for my third this or that, we are considering slip stitching versus stitching in the ditch. Now, when it comes to securing my dress linings to my dresses, I'm more likely than not going to slip stitch. Does it take a little bit while longer? Absolutely it does. But I just feel like it gives such a clean finish on the inside of the dress, and it means that I don't risk any of the stitching in the ditch, missing the ditch, and then showing up on my rayon fabrics. I don't like that, you guys. And so, even though I don't really enjoy hand stitching that much, I will take the time when I'm working with rayon and when I'm making dresses and trying to attach the lining to the dress at the waistband. I will sit down, I will slow down, and I will slip stitch. Now, when it comes to working with things like denim and doing like skirts, I will probably go ahead and try stitching in the ditch. Sometimes you miss the ditch and a couple of your stitches show on the right side of your garment, but I don't find it to be that noticeable when using denim fabric, especially if I decide to use thread that actually matches with my fabric. So again, when it comes to slip stitching versus stitching in the ditch, 8 times out of 10, your girl is gonna do the slip stitching. It does take a little bit longer, as I said, but I just feel like it gives a much neater finish. But what about you guys? Are you team slip stitch or are you team stitching in the ditch? Now for number 4, we are going to be weighing in on PDF versus paper patterns. Now this one again is very, very tricky for your girl because I actually do prefer paper patterns. I like to pull my paper patterns out of the envelope. I still do go ahead and trace them off, but it means that I can skip the assembling of the PDF patterns. Oh my gosh. I really, really don't enjoy assembling PDF patterns. Now, because of where I live and the limited access to paper patterns, usually I end up having to buy the PDF copy. That means I'm going to print it off, then I'm going to trim off all of the edges and then take time assembling it, all before I can even pick my size and trace it off on my tracing paper. Now, either which way, I do trace because I like to preserve my original patterns. I am a girl who really, really takes time to do fitting adjustments, and in the event that one of my adjustments goes wrong, I like to be able to revert to the original pattern without having to either source a new pattern or reprint and stick together the PDF copy. Now, when I'm working with a paper pattern, I do like to press out my pattern pieces, and I'm talking about the actual paper pattern pieces. Usually it's tissue paper. I like to press them out using a no steam setting on my iron just to get out all of those wrinkles. I feel like it's really, really important to press your pattern pieces. You would have heard me going on and on about it when I was talking about my 5 sewing rules that I never ever ignore. If you happen to have missed that video, I'll drop it in right here and you can go and check out the 5 things that I absolutely have to do whenever I'm sewing up a garment. So once I have pressed out my pattern pieces, then as I said, I trace them off and then I make my fitting adjustments. But if I have a preference, then I will definitely choose a paper pattern over a PDF pattern any given day. It just makes my process a little bit shorter in that I don't have to stick my PDFs together. Now, obviously, there are some benefits from having PDF patterns. It means that I can get my hands on patterns that I would not otherwise be able to get them on, and I can get it fairly quickly. You purchase the pattern, you download it, you print it, you assemble it, and you're ready to go. The delay, as it were, comes with the actual assembly of the pattern. Now, when we're talking about a small PDF, let's think like 20 pages, then it's not so bad. But when we're talking about a huge PDF where you're sticking together like 60 and 70 pages, whew, you guys, give me the paper pattern, please. But what about you? Do you prefer using a PDF pattern or are you team paper pattern? Sound off in the comments down below. And then let us get talking about the final this or that. And we are considering team zippers or team buttons and buttonholes. Now, you guys, I have a preference for making shirts and shirt dresses. I really, really do enjoy making a shirt or shirt dress. And so for that reason, I would probably say I am team buttons and buttonholes. Let me think about it for a minute. Is that right? Now, when I'm making things with zippers, I've never shied away from making stuff with zippers. I know some people are intimidated installing, especially the invisible zipper. I have not found that to be the case as far as my sewing journey is concerned. I do quite enjoy installing an invisible zipper, but I guess it's because of the type of item I prefer to make. I would probably say that I would sew up an item using buttonholes and buttons more frequently than I sew up items that need invisible zippers. And so, for that very limited reason, I'm going to choose buttons and buttonholes over zippers. Now, don't get me wrong, I find sewing buttonholes very, how do I say it? It causes me to feel some anxiety when I'm putting in my buttonholes. And that is just because buttonholes can be quite temperamental. It really just depends on what mood your machine is in on a given day and what fabric substrate you're using. Sometimes my buttonholes sew up flawlessly, every single buttonhole, chef's kiss. Other times, there just be that one buttonhole, you guys, just that one buttonhole that makes me want to pull all my hair out and then jump on board to team zippers. But overall, I don't find them to be that intimidating. As I said, it really just depends on my sewing machine, whether she's in the mood for buttonholes or not. Thankfully, my baby does sew buttonholes quite nicely. I can't complain too much, but there always is that one buttonhole that tries to take you out. I remember when I was working on my Mimi G Jessica dress, two of my buttonholes, you guys, two of my buttonholes, like out of like 12 or 13 buttonholes, tried to make me pull my hair out. And it was those two buttonholes very near to that waistline seam. Now, I had pressed out my waistline seam after I had trimmed it down, and I even went ahead and used my clapper to try and flatten the seam as much as possible. But for some reason, that little hump was just throwing out my automatic buttonhole foot just a little bit, and it caused two of my buttonholes to be a little bit wonky. Is it noticeable to anybody looking at my dress from afar? No, it's not. You would really have to be up close and examining my garment in order to see that mistake. And if you're that close, baby, then you need to step back. Now, when I was sewing up this shirt dress, all of my buttonholes were flawless. From my collar stand right the way down to my hemline, all of my buttonholes were really, really good. And so, again, I will say it really just depends on the fabric and on my machine. Now, what about you guys? Are you team buttons and buttonholes or are you team zippers? I should jump in and say, when I finish sewing on my buttonholes, it does take me a year and a day to go ahead and attach my buttons. Because I have to sit down and hand sew my buttons, I do not have a button foot for my Bernina machine. I do have a button foot for my Singer Quantum, but I feel like these days she isn't sewing as nicely as she once did, and I feel like maybe she needs to be serviced. However, because of where I live, that has not been possible, but I'm hoping that soon enough the opportunity presents itself and I'll be able to take her away to get her serviced. So, after all that babbling, you guys, the question was, are you team button and buttonholes or are you team zippers? For the fifth and final time, sound off in the comments down below and let me know which is your preference. No, I'm really hoping that you guys enjoyed today's video. It is a little bit different to the content that you usually see here, but I do like to drop in a spontaneous video every now and then just to break up the monotony here on the channel. Now, if you did enjoy today's video, be sure to go ahead and give your girl a thumbs up. And if you have gotten this far in today's video and you're not a subscriber, then please do consider subscribing on your way out. Again, comment. I have asked you 5 different this or that questions, and so you have a lot to engage with me on. So let us move the conversation from off the screen to down below in the comment section. And until next time, you guys, stay calm, stay cool, stay safe, and absolutely keep sewing. Peace.